Hey, it's Dr. Crone again. We're back with the second video in our Legislatures and Executives unit. This time we'll look at elections. So there's two different electoral systems that democracies can choose from. The first one's called the single member district winner-take-all system. The British call it the first past the post system. In this system, voters will vote for a candidate, and each district has a number of candidates competing for one seat. And the person who gets the most votes wins. It doesn't have to be a majority of the votes. It could just be a plurality. And whoever wins the most votes in one district earns the seat in the legislature. This is the system we have in the United States. It's also the system they have in Britain. So notice that even though the United States and Britain both have different types of systems for dividing power, we've got a presidential system in the US and a parliamentary system in Britain, they both have the same type of electoral system. So the other type of electoral system is called a multi-member district proportional representation system. And here, the districts don't just have one winner, they have multiple winners. Each district has a bunch of representatives in the legislature. And when you vote for a party rather than the name of a person. And the seats in that district are assigned to the parties by the proportion of the vote. So you could have a district that had different parties that each won seats from that district. The parties are the ones who decide which among their members become the people who take the seats. France has a system like this, Germany, Italy, Japan, many systems have this multi-member district proportional representation system, or at least a version of that. So I know this is a little bit confusing, so let's break it down with this oversimplified example. And I want to give a shout out to Professor Douglas Amy at Mount Holyoke College, who came up with this the math of this example, and I think it's definitely oversimplified. So if you imagine a country that has 50 seats in its legislature, just any hypothetical country, if they chose a single member winner-take-all system, they would have 50 districts, and each one of those districts would elect one representative. So that's the system we have in the US. If that same country decided to have a multi-member proportional representation system, they might divide up into 5 districts, each of which had 10 members who were all elected from that district. So to make the math especially simple, what we're going to do is assume that in each district in our hypothetical country, no matter how small or large that district is, in each district we have the following distribution of votes. Party A gets 41%, Party B gets 39%, and Party C gets 20%. If that was the distribution of the vote in all of the districts in the single member district system, then Party A would win each district. Even though it only has a few more percentage points than the other parties, it does have the plurality. So it would win in all the districts, and in our hypothetical simplified legislature, it would have all of the seats. And here you can see the magnification of the vote to the legislature makeup, where a party that only has a plurality of the votes ends up with 100% of the representation. Now, obviously, that's an oversimplified example. But let's look at a multi-member district situation with proportional representation where they had the same vote distribution. Here, remember, we're talking about hypothetically about 5 districts, each of which can elect 10 people. Every district would then have 4 members from Party A, 4 from Party B, and 2 from Party C. So in this system, what you can see is that the closeness between Party A and Party B is reflected in the fact that they both essentially get the same number of representatives. And Party C also wins some seats. So you get a legislature that is much more reflective of the national vote. So a political scientist named Maurice Duverger is famous for his law, which basically is based on observation of the situation in different democracies that have these two different kinds of electoral systems. It's also based on mathematics. And what Duverger's law, without going into the complexities of it, basically says is that countries that have winner-take-all single-member district elections are going to have very small party systems. They're going to have probably what Duverger would say is they're going to have two parties, like in the United States. Because in a system like that, voting for a quote-unquote third party or a minor party would be seen as a wasted vote since they had no chance of winning if they only had 20% or less of the support in the electorate. Now, you may have a country like Britain that has more of a 3 or 4 party system, but what Duverger said is the difference there is that the countries, there are some parties that have regionally strong third parties, like the Scottish National Party, which is a minority party if you look at the whole country, but it's actually the plurality party in most of the districts in Scotland. Now, what Duverger's law says, the opposite of this is that in multi-member proportional representation systems, you're going to end up with multiple parties because, logically speaking, there's more incentive for a small party. We also see that Duverger's law is more dramatically shown in the United States with the intense persistence of a two-party system. We've never really had a third party or minor party that's had any sustained electoral success at the national level. And there are some things in the United States system that even magnify the benefits of the winner-take-all system, such as laws that states put into practice that make that benefit the two major parties. Also the media, because they see it as a wasted vote for a third party, is less likely to cover third party or minor party candidates. And the other thing we've got going in the United States is that our constituencies are regionally very large, and our US Congress members represent a very large amount. If you think of it, our total Congress has 535 members. The French legislature, if you combine both of its chambers, has almost 700 members for a much, much smaller country. So the larger the constituencies are, the more likely that you'll have the two major parties dominating the system as well. So because of Duverger's law, we get different kinds of outcomes and government styles based on which system is chosen. So in the winner-take-all system, like the US, again, it usually leads to two large parties, sometimes three. We rarely see more successful than that. And this is usually going to lead to what's called majority government, where nobody has to form a coalition to govern, because the party that has the most seats almost always has 50% of the seats or more. In a proportional system like Germany, although Germany's is more what we're going to call a hybrid system, we'll see that later, but in a proportional system with multi-member districts, that's usually going to lead to multiple parties, and often that's going to lead to what we're going to call coalition government, because there isn't going to be a party that has a 50% plus one majority in the legislature. The downside of this, the positive, is lots of political parties representing lots of different points of view, sometimes more extreme points of view. Certainly that's a downfall of a winner-take-all system where you don't get the more extreme voices like, let's say, a Green Party or a Libertarian Party represented in government. But the downside of a proportional representation system is that it can lead to instability, because the more parties you have in a coalition government, the more likely that coalition is to fall apart and disagree with each other. Let's take a look at an example of a coalition government. This is one that was formed in Germany as a result of the 2021 German national elections. So Germany has a hybrid proportional representation system, and you should have read about that in one of the case studies for today. So it provides a great example of what can happen in a system where multiple parties have been brought about by the use of proportional representation. So here are the results from that German 2020 2021 election. And as you can see, the party that has the plurality is the Social Democratic Party. So it's represented in red over on the left side of the horseshoe. That horseshoe represents all of the seats in the German Bundestag. So the Social Democratic Party has the most votes. It's got the plurality, but it doesn't have anywhere close to a majority of votes. So it was the highest vote getter, but it got about 26% of the vote. So what happened is that the Social Democrats created a coalition, joining forces with the Greens and the Free Democratic Party, to create what has been nicknamed the Traffic Light Coalition, since the colors of the parties are red, green, and yellow. And when we put those three parties together in coalition, they control 52% of the seats, almost 52% in the Bundestag, and that gives them the majority. So that allows the coalition to control what legislation passes in the Bundestag. And in practice, what happens is that in a coalition is the leaders of those three parties are going to hammer out compromises on legislation before legislation is even proposed to the parliament, based on what is going to be acceptable to the three coalition parties' members. The largest party in the coalition typically chooses who the chief executive of the government is going to be. So in this case, the leader of the largest party of the coalition, the Social Democrats, has become the chancellor, and that's Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Chancellor is the word the Germans use. More common term is prime minister or premier of a parliamentary system. But you can see from this list that the other two parties in the coalition were awarded high prominent positions in the cabinet government in exchange for coming into the coalition. So while the Social Democrats are the largest party, they don't control the whole cabinet. And in fact, the Green Party leader is the vice chancellor, and you can see that the Free Democrats, a pretty small party, control the Ministry of Finance, which is a very important position in the German cabinet. And so they get those positions in exchange for becoming part of the governing coalition. So both winner-take-all and proportional representation systems have drawbacks. Winner-take-all systems lead to overrepresentation of plurality parties, and can lead to lack of multi-party competition. So like in the United States, a lot of times students complain that we don't have more than two parties, and it's very well explained by the fact that we have winner-take-all. But proportional representation systems also have problems. One of their problems is they can lead to having too many political parties, and that will lead to very unstable coalition governments, where you have to put 5 or 6 parties together to create a majority in the parliament, and they're always going to be squabbling, and those governments fall apart all the time. And so since 1989, just as an example, Italy has extreme proportional representation system. Since 1989, they've had 17 different prime ministers, while like in the US, we've only had 5 presidents, and actually France, with a different system, has only had 5 presidents. And I believe even England has only had 6 or 7 prime ministers since then. So lots of countries, especially recently in the last 20 or 30 years, have decided to create hybrid systems, and that's what Germany has done, which has some aspects of winner-take-all and some of proportional representation. Basically what it is that each voter has 2 votes. They get to vote for a single member to represent a home district, just like we would in the US. And then they also vote separately for a party preference, and that is tallied up nationally and used to assign a certain number of seats that are set aside in the legislature for proportional representatives. So it's kind of a compromise version. So that's the end of our video lecture comparing different types of electoral systems. By the way, this is the second and final video in our unit on legislatures and executives, if you haven't already watched the first one. go back and do that now. And once you've watched both, you're ready to post in the discussion board. I'm looking forward to hearing what you took away from our lectures this week, and especially if you are studying a democracy, go ahead and see if you have something to add that you know about your country, applying some of the stuff we learned here. So I'll see you next time.